When I originally started to make this video, I was conflicted. It was because of that state of being conflicted is the motivation for wanting to make the video. I had come across a bit of information in a way I'm not exactly very happy I did, that had me questioning myself. It's something from a long time ago in my past, and something that I recognize had a modicum of truth to it. There was a level of self-denial in my perspective on the events that happened, as well as being self-aware enough to realize that there was some reality in the statements that had been made. Now, I'm being kind of vague because, quite frankly, the entire story is really not that important, but I can say that the person who had this particular opinion of me was giving sort of a half-sided view. Yet, as I said, there still was a modicum of truth to what they said, so that's where the introspective thought process began. But it wasn't until I finished being torn up over the things that were said that and by finished I mean that I stopped myself long enough to sort of contemplate why I was feeling the way that I was feeling. Why I was brought to the point of feeling that what they had to say about me was valid enough that I truly needed to do some serious reflection on my self-worth. Whenever I get into a situation like that, when I'm confronted with these kind of things, it has an emotional attribute, and I have to think about that reaction. I'm not very good with emotion, so it always bothers me when I feel something that I don't understand what the motivation is. Now, most people, when I talk about these kind of things to them, they say, when it comes to emotions, it doesn't make sense. It's not logical. You won't understand. So sitting there trying to, mentally beat it down isn't going to help. And so I'm stuck with a conflict in that regard. Am I thinking too much about the situation when, in fact, the situation can't be thought about? We're talking about emotional content. And so it begins a spiral of, well, is it legitimate, or am I simply just giving it legitimacy? Am I really thinking about it, or, am I just sort of trying to rationalize? It just keeps going and going and turns into this bad thing. But in that process, I was able to come to a thought that I've shared with a lot of people when I was talking to them about how they were feeling, when I was talking to them about their emotional standing and why they shouldn't feel the way that they do. Not because I'm trying to disavow their emotional value in regards to their thoughts on whatever that situation may be, but simply just a matter of I'm always the kind of person that believes that that even though it is an emotional in context, that there's a level of mental investment. There's a logical or a non-emotional attribute. I used that word twice. A non-emotional aspect to it that weighs into the overall state of being. So to say, well, you shouldn't feel that way because logically, blah, 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 blah. It's not always the best way to handle this kind of a circumstance. I know that. Dealing with people, and people that are a lot better when it comes to emotions, to say to them, you shouldn't feel that way, and this is why, and they give them a logical reaction. You're going to feel what you're going to feel. So thus we come back to the idea of me contemplating if I'm actually feeling something, or if it's just a mental state that's leading me into an emotional state, or am I just using a mental state to rationalize away the feelings that I'm feeling, and you can see it's a convoluted, complicated thing. But the point of this entire babbling video is simply that I've come to understand, or I've come to realize for myself that something I wanted to share with y'all, using myself as the reference so you can see where I came to it. I've come to understand that people feel differently about who you are. Different people have had different experiences with you. Some people will think you're a wonderful person. Some people think you're a horrible person. Some people think you were the greatest thing since sliced bread. Some people will think that you're, Hitler himself, reincarnated. And if you were to take your value as a person based on that one perspective, it would be a mistake. Even if it's an overwhelmingly good perspective, it's still a mistake. If it's an overwhelmingly bad perspective, it's still a mistake. In this sense in this situation. I had someone who I had a very strong emotional attachment to a while ago, and even though that emotional attachment was twisted, because I've never been healthy when it comes to emotional anything, even though their perspective was based on that and decisions that I've made and choices that I made at that time, allowing that particular person's philosophy or thought of me define my self-worth would be a huge mistake. And so that's what I'm basically trying to share here, is that no one person's thoughts of you define who you are. People are complicated creatures. People are involved creatures. And you can be 1,000 different things at 1,000 different times in your life. And no one thing will ever truly encompass who you are. We give value to the thoughts of others. Without that value, their thoughts have no real relevance. And that's exactly it. If someone thinks that you're a horrible person, it doesn't matter unless you make it matter, unless it becomes valuable to you. You are giving this person's opinion, this person's perspective, weight. And I still feel bad about what I read, because it came from somebody I didn't expect to see that from, and it came from somebody who was saying things that were pretty counter to what they've said to me themselves. So after going back and forth and thinking about it, they said what they needed to say to somebody else. They said what they needed to say to that person because that's what they needed to say. It doesn't make it the truth about the situation, and it doesn't make it a lie about the situation. It just makes it their take at that moment about that situation. So using myself as a perspective, instead of thinking that I'm a horrible person because of the things that this person said about me and the person that I was when I was younger, and the experiences that I shared with them, and not even all the experiences, just very one-sided, very specific, cherry-picked situations. But because it came from a person who I had value in at one point in my life, it had a lot of weight. So you can see their words became more powerful because I gave them strength. So what I'm saying is simply just remember that you're not what one person makes you out to be, unless you yourself believe that. And I know that there's enough people in my life that think that I'm a good person, that this one person's opinion of me isn't the end-all be-all of who I am. So that was it. That was the reason why I wanted to make this video, and that's why I'm posting it. And I can tell that it was very disjointed and very fractured, but that's just the way my brain works. So if the train went in multiple directions and I changed the process in mid-sentence, I apologize. It's just, that's how it is for me. Anyway, so there you go. That's where my thought was. Thought I'd share it. Now you got it. And do with it what you will.